The ubiquitous access point. They're everywhere if you look. And this is a Juniper access point, an enterprise grade, truly enterprise access point on this channel. What's going on? Well, I reached out to Juniper because I had some questions about Wi-Fi 7 and the lack of Wi-Fi 7 in the enterprise. And Juniper's been rolling out new products, so I mean, surely it's going to be on their roadmap, right? They actually sent me 3 of these, and it led me down a rabbit hole that was much deeper and more interesting than I thought, because Wi-Fi 7 is not a thing. Wi-Fi 7 is not really a thing in the consumer space either. I mean, okay, yeah, you can buy Wi-Fi 7 devices, but there's Wi-Fi 7 frequencies, which is 6 gigahertz, but then there's also 320 megahertz bandwidth, frequency ranges, and that is very difficult to support when we're talking about enterprise density devices. But things are happening that are interesting in the Wi-Fi space, and it does have to do with the software stack and a whole bunch of other interesting details. And I wanted to take a closer look at that using the Juniper stuff as a vehicle. It's not Juniper sponsored or anything like that, but we are going to talk a lot about Juniper and Juniper Mist and AI, because there's AI in everything, and the software solution and all the stuff. And let's take it back a notch. Come with me on a journey of suffering and learning.
Wi-Fi 7 in the enterprise is going to be really difficult to support unless we 5x our access point density. I mean, that's sort of the problem that we're up against. And to be clear, the Juniper stuff that we're talking about in the video today is not Wi-Fi 7, but I sort of wanted to start this project to get a lay of the land for what an individual could expect from a Wi-Fi 7 deployment. And I'm not talking about like just the crap that you would buy at Walmart or Best Buy or something like that. If you're on this channel, you're a power user. You're looking for something that's not going to waste your time at home. We've done these kinds of videos in the past where it's like, I want something that's good, but I'm really not willing to pay for like the user's Meraki subscription or something like that at home, but I am willing to pay for a solution. Think about a classroom with 20 or 30 people in it. Even if you have one access point per classroom, when we're talking about a channel width of 320 megahertz and the sophistication of Wi-Fi 7 radios in each individual client, it's not realistic to expect that 30 clients in that classroom are going to be able to pull gigabit wireless speeds on what is ultimately a shared medium. And so, to that end, these AP45s are not Wi-Fi 7. They do 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz, but they're not Wi-Fi 7. But this also gives me a little bit more insight into the state of the art in the enterprise. It's like, okay, if we're not going to reduce the density because enterprises want to maintain or have a really high level of number of clients per access point, but they also want a really good experience in terms of being able to support end users, being able to deploy, and all of that kind of stuff. So the rest of this video is kind of focused on what those experiences are. And to be sure, if you're looking at a solution like this, you're not going to deploy 3 access points. 3 access points is what I deployed. That's the absolute minimum, because you're setting up some fairly elaborate enterprise infrastructure when you take on a task like this. Really, I would recommend like 8 access points is kind of a minimum if this is the route that you're going to go down. I mean, you can have value in just 2 or 3 satellite installations. Sure, maybe you've got, a scattered workforce and you're going to support 20 or 30 people. For me, supporting 35, 40 people in a setup roughly 25,000 square feet, 3 access points isn't going to do it. Just between the square footage, the metal in the walls, and number of people that demand really insane speeds. But maybe in some scenarios, 3 access points would be enough. Also, some of my experience with this comes from a context of using Aruba's Instant OS. Aruba's got their virtual controller and the cognitive cloud and all this other kind of stuff. I'm also familiar with Cisco's on-prem management stuff, and of course Meraki. And I really like what Juniper has put together. Like, it's actually a little bit more polished feeling, and it feels like they've gotten their web service ducks in a row in a way that other vendors haven't, at least in second half of 2024. It seems like everybody in the enterprise space is moving toward having a single management pane for dealing with all of this. which is definitely good and definitely easier on your help desk support, because thinking about clients that want to connect and do stuff. But the thing that I see here as a differentiator with Juniper is that when you look at the actual access point configuration and like the hardware in an individual access point, I mean, these are all made in Taiwan, and this seems like it's pretty high caliber Taiwanese gear. There's a lot of computational horsepower in each individual access point. And Juniper is leveraging that in a couple of clever ways we'll talk about, to do with troubleshooting, frame gathering, like PCAP right on the device and saving things in little buffers and forwarding that to the cloud. To the extent that they also give you the ability to run your own microservices on access points with the leftover compute capacity, if that is a value add that you would have in the enterprise in order to have diagnostics or better connectivity, or even just wanting to customize the access points in your own special way. Having a lot of extra compute on the access point, I think, is handy and will be handy for the future, so that's really nice. Juniper also has their Marvis thing. It's meant to evoke Iron Man Jarvis, I think. But Marvis, it's an AI tool, or it's a tool that has AI, and it does have some really cool, interesting features. I don't know that I have seen features that have been as coherent when we're talking about like Meraki or competing products, but this is a tool that gives you insight into, these are the access points that are participating in a mesh. These are the access points that have access to these VLANs. There may be a misconfiguration in that this access point doesn't seem to be able to communicate on this VLAN. There may be a misconfiguration in that the iPhone devices on this particular access point are struggling to achieve a 40 megahertz channel width. Marvis has stuff in it that is built with the enterprise trouble tickets that Juniper has experienced. I don't really think this is a lot different than a lot of other enterprise vendors, but the difference is that the single pane of glass interface that they've given you seems more well put together, and something that I would feel confident in giving my first and second tier help desk support people access to this in order to be able to troubleshoot clients that are not connecting, or maybe even use it as kind of a self-help deal. Like, hey, this person with this MAC address or this device is having trouble doing stuff. What sort of insight do we have for figuring that out? And so Marvis is a really interesting thing that is worth a look. It may be worth getting a demo of if you're in the enterprise access space and you've never used any of these new fun, cool tools. This is also a setup that is large and complicated enough that when you make changes to your configuration and you push it to the access points, there is kind of a workflow, or an assumed workflow, because if you were running this on a campus or in an enterprise and you're doing this kind of configuration, you don't necessarily want those changes to take effect immediately. Whereas when you're using like a toy operating system for your access points, it's like, it kicked everybody off and it's immediate. Is that a bug? Is it a feature? Is it a design flaw? It's a debate for another day. But these devices, they take a little while to apply the settings. It maybe takes a little while for the cloud to sync. I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. You can explicitly configure it to not actually make configuration changes until the clients have been asked to roam to other access points, or to, there's not really anything going on with a particular access point, and so it can apply its configuration change, or it can apply a breaking configuration change and continue from there. So bug, feature, annoyance, I think it's pretty cool, but depending on what your expectations are, you may make a change and you may expect it to be immediate in an access point, and it may not be immediate. And it's not just because it's a cloud-based controller. Now, when I initially started with these, the 2.4 gigahertz band was disabled, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what your environment is. But one of the neat things is that when the 2.4 gigahertz band is disabled, the power requirements are not quite as steep. These access points can use up to 90 watts of power, and they're 4x4 by 4x4 by 4x4 for each of the 3 bands that they have. I also expected some more local functionality to work, and it did, although it's cloud integrated, but usually you can still run other tools and access stuff on the access points locally. I'm talking about things like Securitas, which is AeroScout, or ClenTrack, which is on the healthcare side. And I think that works, but I think maybe it comes from the cloud API instead of local access. I didn't really have enough time to dig into that for this video. It may also be something that is a limitation to these Wi-Fi 6E devices, because these are like bleeding edge. Even though this is not technically Wi-Fi 7, these are the most bleeding edge, fastest Juniper devices that I could get my hands on. And when we talk about performance, the performance was nothing short of breathtaking. So if you did take the time to configure Wi-Fi 6E with the extra wide channels, then yeah, you can pack in the density, you can pack in the throughput, you can pack in the performance. The access points are smart enough to do client steering. They're even smart enough to deal with clients that don't correctly handle extra wide channel width. So like older iPhones, even when you tell it that you want a 40 megahertz channel, they only work on 20 megahertz. When you're mixing things like MediaTek and Broadcom and Intel, sometimes there are bugs with those driver stacks. I actually recreated one of the situations where older iPhones, this has been fixed for a while, but where older iPhones will not correctly negotiate at 40 megahertz channel widths. And this is where something really interesting in the feature set sort of shows itself in the setup here. When we're talking about clients that are having trouble associating with an access point, usually as an administrator, it is a little bit of a pain in the butt. You're going to have to connect to the access point. You're going to have to run a packet capture while your clients are having trouble doing stuff. These things are smart enough and they have enough headroom capacity that it can actually preemptively capture stuff, do the packet capture, when it detects that a client is having trouble connecting. And so your first and second tier help desk people can just download a PCAP file and then run Wireshark on their local machine without otherwise having administrative access to be able to do that on the access points. There is a scary amount of possible tiers in the subscription list. Some of it's built in. Some of it for me was showing up as trial, and so it's kind of like, But again, this is enterprise stuff, and I wanted to have a baseline for what I can experience on like the pro side. This is not anything that I would ever recommend that you deploy even in your 9,000 square foot mansion palatial estate with multiple access points. I mean, okay, maybe you're like, maybe in like the 10,000 square foot, okay, maybe you're starting to, but no, this is the baseline for like enterprise features trickling down into the rest of us. And these features are what you should expect on a campus solution enterprise thing. Stuff to empower your help desk, stuff to lower the number of people that are required to support hundreds or thousands of users on your wireless access point. Stuff to figure out what sort of buggy, problematic clients you have and help you work around them. And so it's ticking all of those boxes. But also I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just like crappy radios. Because I get the feeling, not from Juniper, but I get the feeling that some of the approach for maximizing the profit margin in the enterprise is to pretend like the problem is we really need to increase the number of access points because the clients are so fast, we really need to lower the density of clients per access point, which is not untrue. That is absolutely true, but it also means that the enterprise companies that are saying that can be tempted to install garbage tier radios in their access points because they can get away with it. The 6 gigahertz band I tested all the way up to 4.8 gigabit, and real world over the radio like 4.4 gigabit in the same room is achievable. Our 2.4 gigahertz band is good for up to 1.1 gigabit, and our 5 gigahertz band is good for up to 2.4 gigabit. That is the maximum data rate that you're going to get on that connection. But oh boy, with a good client software and the channel width set as wide as possible, you can achieve those data rates. There's a reason these access points are 5 gigabit on the backhaul. That's it's needed. So yeah, in 2024, this is kind of what the state of the art is in enterprise access points. And for me, the killer features in enterprise is that you are giving your first and second tier help desk users, or your help desk, the people manning your help desk, access to some pretty deep tools, pre-prepared packet capture up to and including, but also all the tools underneath that in order to be able to troubleshoot client connectivity. It's a pretty big deal. Or, you know, I've been sleeping on this for a long time. I've been suffering under an old Meraki subscription or something, I guess. I don't know. But this is pretty cool stuff. Yeah, this is what it should be in the enterprise. This is sort of the minimum viable solution in the enterprise. And this is definitely not the most expensive enterprise solution that you can get. It's not the cheapest, but it's also not the most expensive. And this is the features that you should have in the enterprise if you are deploying 8 or 10 or 100 of these across your campus for hundreds or thousands of users. So this is where we are. As home users, power home users, or small business users, this is also the kind of features that we should expect. The fact that these are cloud connected, but the crazy person at the helm, me, toggling the access point's ability to reach their cloud supervisors didn't materially negatively impact their ability to function, because again, these access points have enough intelligence on them that they can manage, to an extent, the clients and the connectivity and everything else, even when they're not actually able to phone home. So bottom line, I can't find any way that they're being misleading or dishonest with their product. Are they charging appropriately? Do you have war stories? Do you want to engage below and or on the forum and let me know? Because this is the first adventure that I've had with something like this, and it has gone a little differently than I expected, but I was also genuinely impressed by the number of bits that I could move over a wireless spectrum and not have anything bad happen, because I really did try to make a lot of bad things happen with a lot of buggy clients running at the same time, and these access points just shrugged it off. Fast roaming, video conferencing, basically everything I could throw at it. They did better than any other access points than I've ever tested. Cross operating system, Linux, Windows, Mac OS, and everything else. But again, enterprise. It stands to reason. And they're brand new access points. They are the heralds of Wi-Fi 7, even though they are not technically Wi-Fi 7 themselves. So, good job, Juniper. Well, this is level 1. I'm going to keep testing these, and there's probably going to be a follow-up and some other interesting things, but yeah, let me know. Engage below or in the forum, which is where I'm going to go now. All right, I'm signing out, and I'll see you there.